Hey everybody, this is a Emerson Model 561 AM broadcast only table radio, and it was made about 1949, maybe 48. This model was produced, I think, from about 47 to 1950. The unusual thing about the radio is that it was designed by Raymond Loewy, and if you're familiar with him, just about any product you used in the 20th century was probably designed by him. Everything from the Lucky Strike cigarette pack to the Studebaker Avanti to the livery for Air Force One, and he also designed many of the corporate logos, Exxon, and redesigned the Coca-Cola bottles. And he's a really fascinating guy. There are many books about him, and he was a Frenchman who came to the United States very early in the 20th century and made a fortune as a industrial designer. You'll be amazed at all the products that you're familiar with that he actually designed. He designed some other radios as well for Hallicrafters, the S40 and the S43. Anyway, this radio is in very nice shape. It's got a couple cracks. You can see one back here. And I used some JB Weld on the inside of the cabinet to stabilize that and keep it from cracking anymore. A little one right up here. I'm not sure what this plastic is. I don't believe it's Bakelite, because Bakelite was usually brown and painted if it was some other color than brown. So I think this is a more modern plastic, but just not really sure what type it is. But it acts very much like Catalin, but it's not. Loewy did not particularly care for the brown Bakelite or the walnut and radios of the time, and so he did a lot of designs that were a little different than the ordinary radio. Anyway, it's a unusual looking radio. They're not real common, and very easy to restore. The one unusual thing also about this radio is that the cabinet fits over the chassis from the top. In other words, most radios you pull the chassis out from behind, but this one comes out from the bottom. And to remove it, it's very simple. You just simply unscrew by hand these four the legs there, and then remove the knobs, and then you can pull right up, slide the cabinet off. But you have to be very careful. This dial pointer here is kind of V-shaped, and you need to remove this very carefully so you don't damage it. They're often in pretty bad shape anyway. They'll be kind of bent where somebody else has had the cabinet off, and also may need to be touched up with some white paint. Anyway, I recapped this radio, replaced all of the electrolytic and the wax and paper capacitors. I ended up replacing probably about half the resistors in it. They were quite a few of them out of tolerance. But once I did that, it plays real well. Well, there were three bad tubes I had to replace as well. And the other neat thing was that when I got the radio, all the tubes were original. They were all Emerson branded tubes. Unfortunately, when I replaced them, of course I couldn't get Emerson branded tubes.
And if he would have... We understand saving money for the family is now more important than ever. That's why we're offering our best gun.
It doesn't seem like he's been anywhere near as dominant and as explosive in his second year. I know Zadarius Smith is still kicking ass and taking names. What's going on with Preston and
this radio has a built-in loop antenna, so
development?
Moving the radio
I think
around.
what we saw last year, in a lot of ways, was a little bit of a mirage in terms of the sack number.
Go back to 1140.
We don't care if your employees starve. We don't care if families go hungry.
So you can see how it fades in and out based on.
You can't open up.
And it's got a little handle here, so you can actually easily move it around to get the best reception.
Wearing masks,
Unsustainable rate. This year, he has not been able to snap jump as reliably. That's his.
It's got pretty
best
decent
thing.
sound for a table radio.
That first step.
And I'll show you some pictures of the disassembly and recapping. As far as the cabinet restoration, it was pretty simple. The cabinet was in pretty good shape. I cleaned it with alcohol and Novus #1 plastic cleaner, and gave it a coat of carnauba wax, polished and buffed it. The knobs I just cleaned with denture cleaner, and then dried them off, put them back on, put some felt washers behind. Didn't appear that it came with any, but the knobs get pretty close to the plastic, so I like the felt washers behind it. During the electrical restoration, if you need a schematic, they are available. I like the schematics that come from Sam's Photo Facts, because they include a photograph of the inside of the chassis with all of the components. So if you're looking for capacitor C2, you can just look it right up on the chart here, and there'll be a little arrow pointing to where it is, so you can find it and replace it with the proper value. This radio is simple enough that you don't need to have a schematic. You can just replace each capacitor with one that's the same value as marked on the capacitor. Sometimes, though, you can't read the values, and it helps to have a schematic. Anyway, that's about it for the Emerson model 561. Thanks for watching.